personal
Mm.
responsibility is the key. I have the ability to do what's in my power to make things better. Can Jenny irritate me? Absolutely yes. Can Jenny do things that I don't like? Absolutely yes. But I have the power to decide how I'm going to respond and how I'm going to attend to myself and whether or not I'm going to stay plugged in, as Tara said, to the Lord or not to be my source. Jenny is not my source. So personal responsibility is hugely the
Mm.
key and is the source of true empowerment. The fun reality is I was a college professor and Erin Smalley turned out to be a graduate student of mine. And I was talking very enthusiastically about this specialized work that I was doing, the training that I had gotten to do intensive therapy with individuals. And the more I talked, the more Erin was saying, "Hey, you've got to meet my husband, Greg." So Erin got Greg and I together, and then the three of us started really chatting about all that was going on. And Greg had was letting me know actually that his father had had some issues in his ministry where people would hear him speak and read one of his books and watch his videos and so forth, but they would have trouble implementing what they had learned, and they would call up from all over the place. And at the time there was nobody that could help them. They wanted to come out there and work with Gary or anybody there that could help. So Greg said, "Hey, with that training you have, I wonder if you could help us design a program that would enable us to say yes to these couples that we're having to say no to." So I thought, okay, Lord, maybe that's what that specialized training was
Mm.
about.
Huh.
Certainly we can tweak this to work with couples. So we started putting our heads together on how to take this intensive program to couples. And now, 26 years later, we have had the privilege of working with over 15,000 couples
Wow.
from all over the world and have a remarkably high success rate. And we have a long standing relationship, and it's been a delight. And we have learned a
That's
ton together.
fun. So Erin really gets all the credit. That's what
I'm
she's
just
wanting me to hear
I'm gonna
through
start
your
saying
story.
I actually started Hope Restored.
So Bob, the bigger question is, what kind of student was she? Was she your favorite?
Erin,
Was she challenging?
The only thing that
Challenging.
made the only thing that made Erin challenging is she's a little bit obsessive compulsive, and she is a straight A student that I once gave a grade less than that to, and she was not happy about it.
Mm.
And we worked it through, but I've never heard the end of it in 26 years.
I know, and I always say I'd like to say that that has been healed inside of me, but being in my doctoral program, no, still very high achieving. I don't think it goes away.
Yes, so all in all, she's an outstanding student because
Thank
she's
Good.
you.
extremely intelligent.
See, you
Yes.
measure up to
Yes.
Professor
Yeah.
Dr. Bob Paul.
So fun. So Tara, you in fact did a dissertation with couples from Hope Restored. And what was that like? And why are you so passionate about seeing marriages healed?
Yeah, I love working with couples, and my dissertation was on this program that you guys developed. And through my dissertation, I fell in love with it.
Mm.
So, just to give you a little bit of background on my dissertation, I did a qualitative study. So, I interviewed couples who had done an intensive 1 year prior to my research. Three of the couples were successful in continuing with the gains that they had, and three of the couples were not successful.
Wow.
Even though at the
Wow.
end of the intensive, they said it was great.
Huh.
My question was why? I was shocked. Three themes came out, same three themes: successful couples doing it, unsuccessful couples not doing it. And yeah, just really, really fell in love with the program, how they described it. So, why am I passionate about working with couples and marriage? Honestly, it's a little bit twofold. The first part, I truly believe that marriage is an expression of God's image,
Mm.
and we are his image bearers. He is a relational God, and he desires marriage, Christian marriage, to be a witness to the world on his image bearing and who he is.
Mm.
And I think in our fullness, when we do healthy marriage, we really, really bring glory to him.
Mm.
So I'm passionate about that. And the second side of it is kind of really the flip side. It's so disappointing to me that divorce rate is so high.
Yeah.
but not just, I think the stat now is around 40%, something like that. But it's not different in
Mhm.
Christian marriages. And that's what breaks my heart. Like, we have the blueprint,
Mhm. Mhm.
and we need to start using this blueprint to, well, first of all, have amazing marriages, but then second of all, be the image bearers to the world that he wants us to be.
Yeah,
Mm.
we love that,
Mhm.
and we can tell your passion, and
Mhm.
it's fun to hear about that and the work that you both are doing. Bob, when a couple comes in, so let's say they're going through an intensive, often you're going to hear them say something like, the problem in our marriage is we've fallen out of love. We just want to recapture those loving feelings, help us, teach us, how do we rekindle that love? When you hear that, kind of how do you help them to better understand what's really going on?
Well, there's a lot to that actually, but it's one of the things that many therapists actually find very, very difficult. And to me, I say, okay, this is actually something, if that's what they want, this is not that hard, because one of the things that I want to address with them is to get them thinking about the love that they're wanting to experience. Where does that actually come from? And
Mhm.
most of them in our culture really do believe that there's something magical that has to happen. Something, there has to be that spark, that romance, that something there. And the reality is that there's not one drop of love that is ever generated from within any
Mm.
human being.
Mm.
So there's not, I can't create love. God is love. 1 John 4:8. It's very clear. Bob is not love. I can't create love. I can't make it more or less. But what I can do is receive it. So, what I've learned to do and what I help people to see is that if they want to feel more loving feelings for their spouse, all they have to do is to ask the Lord to let Him show them what He is seeing when He looks at them and what He's feeling for them, and receive that love. And then they can experience it and send it on. I don't have to create love for my wife, Jenny. I can ask the Lord to let me see her through His eyes and feel
Mhm.
with His heart. And it's amazing how that can change and how much the Lord can
Mm.
guide those steps forward. And it's a game changer.
It
Mm.
sounds like it, because Tara, why does that make such a big difference? Because someone's listening going, well, we've been through those really hard seasons where we felt so helpless and discouraged and hopeless. Why would that make a big difference? Probably these couples are hoping for the big, the big magical wand to solve our marriage problems. Why is what Bob is saying, why does that make such a big difference?
Oh, we believe this makes all the difference. Well, first of all, if I'm waiting for a magic wand, I'm powerless.
Mm.
Those don't exist.
Mm.
And maybe while God could, snap his fingers, he rarely, if ever, I haven't heard of it, where he changes relationships like that. What he really wants us to do is take personal responsibility,
Mm.
be able to tap into him, know who we are, take care of the fullness of who we are in all four areas of our life. Jesus was asked, what's the most important commandment out of all the commandments? And his response was, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your mind, with all your soul, with all your strength.
Amen.
And we've been able to pull sort of those four things into our emotional, our spiritual, our physical, and our mental well being. And we love him opening that door. And that's a reciprocal relationship, right? It's not just we love him. How do we do that? As Bob is saying, we don't have anything. We love because he loved us first. So this is this beautiful reciprocal relationship in these four amazing areas.
Mm.
And the second is like the first Jesus said, and it's to love your neighbor as yourself, not more than, not less than, as.
Mm.
We talk about the doors of your heart. We need to open the door of your heart up to the Lord and allow him to pour that love in. And from that place of fullness, I'm able to sacrificially pour out love to my spouse, my closest neighbor, and be able to do that. But it also means if my spouse, Vince, is having an off day and he's maybe not pouring back in, it's okay because I'm tapped in.
Mm,
I've got the love from my source. And returned love feels amazing, but it's not required for my well being.
mm,
And in fact, when I'm filled up, I'm able to see Vince
mm.
so much more clearly, more
Yeah.
lovingly, because I'm not needing something from him for my well being.
Mm, mm. It's such a great concept just thinking of plugging into him, refilling so we can pour out. And so many people don't understand that that is technically how it's set up. And we look to our spouse to give us so much. And I love the statement you made of, it's not a requirement. I love that. It's not a requirement of our spouse to give us love. It feels good, but it's not a requirement. But Bob, another concept that you guys talk a lot about is personal responsibility. And of course, this is one that we all know is not taught. We are not taught this. And I love in Hope Restored and all the literature that this is such a primary concept.
Yeah, yeah, and it's interesting, to piggyback on what Tara was just saying, one of the things that I know personally I found very frustrating was that I so commonly, when I thought about the things that were irritating me, because, I kind of tongue in cheek tell people that I've been happily married to my wife Jenny for 14 years. Last October, we celebrated our 44th wedding anniversary. So
So, what
it
happened to
was,
the other 30 years?
yeah, it was just those first 3 decades that we found challenging. So, you know, there is a, there I know we all know some of the challenges that can be there, and they're very real. And most of the time when something difficult was happening in my marriage, I saw Jenny as causing the problem and Jenny as holding the keys to the solution.
Mhm.
Hmm.
So, so I went to God one day and I was whining about that. And he did what he frequently does with me. He kind of put me in my place and he said, "So, Bob, right now, who are you seeing as causing the problem?" And I said, "Well, duh, Jenny, obviously. And who do you see as holding the keys to the solution?" "Well, God, Jenny, if she just did this instead of this, everything would be better." And he said, "So, Bob, who has all the power?" And I said, "Jenny." And then he said, "And how did she get it?" And I paused and I realized I gave it to her.
Mhm.
Mm,
He said, "Bob, I did not give you the power to give it away. I
Mhm.
gave you the power to use responsibly." And this is the key to empowerment. We've got a book that we wrote together, Empowered to Love. This is the essence of it right here. Personal
mm,
responsibility is the key. I have the ability to do what's in my power to make things better. Can Jenny irritate me? Absolutely yes. Can Jenny do things that I don't like? Absolutely yes. But I have the power to decide how I'm going to respond and how I'm going to attend to myself and whether or not I'm going to stay plugged in, as Tara said, to the Lord or not to be my source. Jenny is not my source. So personal responsibility is
Mm.
hugely the
mm,
key and is the source of true empowerment.
it's
I
so good. I
which
want
is
to ask you a question though.
you want to ask me?
Yes.
Wow.
What would you say as far as how many years have we been happily married?
Um, at least 6 months. So
Okay,
we
good. We
are
just hit
we are
33 years.
creeping
I just had to ask that
along.
question.
It took us, like Bob is saying, that I mean, it's same thing. I mean, it took us a while
Yes.
to begin to figure these things out.
Really, it began to change when we met Bob
It
and we
really
started
did.
to understand these
Yeah.
concepts.
So Bob is a beautiful part of our
Yes.
love story in kind of some weird, sort of creepy ways, but
Yeah.
he has helped us. Tara, what about for you? So talking about what you and Bob are discussing, that personal responsibility, like how has that actually played out? Like what's a story from your marriage to where, either you figured this out or you applied this idea of personal responsibility? What does that really look like day to day?
Yeah, that's a good question. Vince and I are celebrating 20 years this year, and amazing.
Congratulations.
It hasn't always been easy. Thank you. And we're in a good place. But Vince doesn't fully buy in to the book and everything that I'm writing in counseling. It's just not his wheelhouse. So a lot of this personal responsibility, I absolutely am kind of doing on my own.
Okay.
And I get excited ish, if you will, because I have a happy marriage. Because if only one person
Mm.
Well,
takes personal responsibility and uses the tools and does this, you can experience a happy, enjoyable marriage, even if your spouse doesn't really buy in or isn't their wheelhouse.
mm,
So I use these tools. I mean, obviously, if we're doing, communication tools, I'm not going to be using the tools exactly how I teach them at Hope Restored, but all the principles behind them I'm absolutely bringing into this marriage. And in a sense, while he may not be consciously doing this, I think we are developing this as a pattern in our relationship because I'm showing up in conversations this way.
mhm.
And that creates a structure that feels, I think, safe enough for both of us to have these conversations.
Because we do have so much influence in the relationship. Tara, how have these concepts influenced the tough times in your marriage, the difficulties in your relationship?
Well, first of all, it's like we call it our yard. So my
Mhm.
yard is my responsibility. If you think of your backyard, you don't want your neighbor coming in and cutting down your trees. It's my yard.
Mhm.
Well, it might be nice for him to pick my weeds. It
Right.
actually isn't. They're mine. Get it on my yard, right? Because maybe I like those weeds. But Holy Spirit will move into my yard and say, no, Tarek, we actually have to deal with those weeds in there. I
Mm,
know I'm getting a little bit off topic on your question, but we also have authority with the Lord in our yard.
mm,
He will say, Tara, we need to deal with those weeds. And he gave us authority to say, okay, let's do that. Or what weeds? No, I'm gonna hide. And he'll let us say no. Doesn't
mm,
usually work out for us. But when we say yes to the Lord, okay, I need to work on those, that's going to make a difference. So, bringing it back to your question,
mhm,
how does that allow for positive influence in the relationship? It's none of my business. And the Lord has said to me more than once, Vince's yard and his weeds are none of your business.
mm,
He speaks quite directly to me that way. Right. Okay. But he comforts me and then he deals with mine.
mm,
And as Bob was talking about, show me how to see Jenny through your eyes, he's also showing me how to see Vince. And we are wired so very, very differently. But as he's cleaning up the weeds in my yard, he's teaching me to love somebody whose brain works so very differently than my brain
mm,
and see the value and the benefit. So I'm able to show up with integrity, the woman and the wife God's called me to be for his well done, good and faithful servant. And that allows for a safer environment for Vince and I to interact in.
mm, mm.
Which
So
is so
good.
powerful, and that's such a huge paradigm shift for couples. Bob, as you guys are working with couples in the intensive, they've come in like you guys have said, they're focused on their spouse. You know, they'll give you the list, maybe the 10-page email on all of what you need to do to change and
What
fix and
they've done
correct.
wrong. Yes.
Exactly. How do people usually try to argue against what you're saying? Because at one level, it makes sense, personal responsibility, focus on your yard. They're just so desperately believing, no, you got to still change them. So what do you typically hear as you lay this out for couples? How do they debate you?
It's interesting. I think that I mean, there's a lot of different pushbacks that we get for, for these ideas because people are very committed to the idea that if you just would fix my spouse, everything would be better.
Right?
Mhm.
And I was honestly in that same boat. I mean, and I had the same kind of encounter with the Lord on this that Tara did, and we have many of our clients that have this exact same thing. It's so natural, and I was just whining and complaining again about Jenny, and I had all these ideas about how we could fix her. I mean, I really was the self-appointed Holy Spirit helper in the Perfecting Jenny project, and nobody had asked for my participation. And God finally really challenged me and said, Bob, do you think I'm not capable of adequately handling my daughter without your assistance? And of
Mm.
course, I pushed back and said, but God, I got some great ideas. I really think you could use my help here. And he said, okay, I'll make a deal with you. He said, when you look at the mess on Jenny's plate, I am really okay with you attending to the mess on her plate the day yours is perfectly clean.
Oof.
Mm,
And I went, I got a pretty good idea when that's going to be, and it's not going to be this side of heaven. So, so I got my marching orders at that point, and I think that that's very typical for couples that come into an intensive. That they tend to be very focused on, much more so on their spouse, but even at times really focused on what a mess they are, and really are
Mm,
judging either themselves, their spouse, or both in a way that I don't think God wants to meet them at. I think God wants to meet them in a place to say, okay, yes, there are problems, are issues, but let's talk about what we can do to make this better. Okay. He's really not wanting to call us out and judge us for being bad. He wants us to be the reflection of him that he created us to be. And he's committed
mhm,
to help us to get there. So we'll share those kind of ideas with people and say, hey, this is what God's calling you to. And I know that you'll be blessed if you let him take you there. How can we
mm,
help you become truly the person that God created you to be, instead of this other manifestation that really isn't a true reflection of you at your core, or God's image that he wants you to bear?
mhm.
That's good.
so good. So, Tara, as we know, the reactive cycle is something that drives so much of the chaos in our marriage relationships and even other relationships. Can you tell us about
Mhm.
what the reactive cycle is and how it shows up in your marriage?
Yeah, absolutely. Reactive cycle is the problem. But what we do is we think the spouse or the conflict, the content of the
Mm,
conflict is the problem. So, what is the reactive cycle? Basically, when you break it down, each person has their own buttons, okay, triggers
mm-hmm.
that something happens and a button gets pressed. And oftentimes we're not even aware of the buttons, or immediately we go to the reason it's being pressed is because of you.
Right.
When in reality, we bring these buttons, these triggers, these vulnerabilities into every relationship. They got wired in just through living in this broken world with a brain that develops over time. I don't know if you know this, but the human brain does not finish developing until age 25.
Hmm.
So we don't have an adult brain until we're 25. It's no wonder those growing up years can be so chaotic. So all of these buttons are written in, or many of them anyway, are written in, and they become kind of a map that's in our brain that gets set off. And when that button gets pressed, there are reactions that we will typically do. And not everybody has the same reactions, but we all have reactions that we do, these protections that come out when we feel vulnerable or hurt, and we react. Again, this is not conscious, oh, I think it's going to be a really good idea for me to defend or for me to blame.
Mm,
I Nobody thinks this is a logical thing. It just happens. And when that happens, of course, it's going to hit our spouse's buttons. And they're going to feel that and immediately knee jerk into their reaction. And round this thing goes. Now, I just did it slowly, but this happens vortex fast. So, an example of reactive cycle in my marriage a number of years ago, Vince and I were doing an amazing vacation. We were in Nice, which was beautiful. And, you're on the seashore and you're seeing the water. We went out for lunch. It was lovely. We decided, okay, it's only lunch. So we're going to share an appetizer and an entree. And because we've got dinner later. And they came and had it plated on two separate different plates.
Hmm.
And we're like, oh, how nice. Split the order, we thought. When the bill came, they didn't. They gave us two full orders. We thought it was big. And of course, they charged us. So this
mhm.
was
Of course.
twice what we were anticipating. And this immediately hit. Vince would call that button his disappointment button.
Hmm.
But Vince really, really does not like being disappointed in that way. When things do not go in the structured way that the world is supposed to go in his mind, it really hits the button hard. And unfortunately, for me, his reaction was blame.
Mm.
So, okay, now he gets into this blame thing, and you better believe that's going to hit a button for me, probably a whole bunch of them. But I felt judged. And here's the thing, I was the one who placed the order. So, of
Mm.
course, the
Your
blame
fault.
is going
Makes
to be the
sense.
reaction that comes,
Makes so much sense.
right? So, okay, but I'm feeling judged. I don't like that feeling. I really don't like that feeling. So, my reaction kicks out with defending. And I get defensive, and we're getting into this. Well, that hits another button of his, and we do a couple loops around here. But then he gets to the point where he stops and he shuts down. So, you know what I do? Oh, I just continue the reactive cycle in my own head. So, I'm beating up my own heart, and he's just quiet over there. So, how do you stop reactive cycle? Personal responsibility.
Mm.
My side, I need to focus on, okay, I need space between my own buttons and my reactions.
Mm.
So, me getting defensive, me lecturing, criticizing, whatever is not going to make this better. It's going to add gasoline onto this sucker.
Hmm.
And me doing that internally still adds gasoline onto the fire that's beating up my own
Mm.
heart. So, stop. Tell that internal part, no, 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 this is not helpful. You're beating up your own heart now. Stop it. And then move to a place of care. Okay, that part that's feeling judged, that part that's feeling controlled, that part that's feeling blamed, whatever that part is, and then start adding compassion
Mm.
for that part. Now, just if I could toss in a wee bit of neuroscience, which I absolutely love, when our buttons are pressed, basically our limbic system, the emotional center, sends neurochemicals up to our adult brain, our prefrontal cortex, and shuts it off. When we move to self-compassion and kindness, that reactivates prefrontal cortex and sends neurochemicals back down to the limbic system to soothe and to calm. So this is the power of this. When we can move back into our own
Mm.
yard, we're actually calming the nervous system so adult brain can show up with integrity again.
I
Mm.
love that
Mhm.
because I think all of us, like you guys, have been at that restaurant. We've gotten our buttons pushed. We've reacted. We've had conflict, whether that's at a restaurant, at home, at the watching the kids' ball game. I mean, anywhere. Bob, I know you've done this as well. You and I've spoken about this and led marriage events, talked a lot about it. It's a powerful awareness. And I love that you guys have begun to really help someone go. What's really driving conflict is the fact that your buttons have been pushed. Now you're reacting. That's creating this spin within the relationship that everybody to some degree will go, yeah, we do that. In Tara, I like that you're beginning then to go, okay, there's a way out. There's so much that we need to unpack.
Mm.
We're gonna go ahead and take a break. And so we're going to pick this conversation up next time to really unpack how do you break out of this thing. So first and foremost, just start to recognize, right? Just be aware that we have buttons that get triggered, we react, and it's going to push our spouse's button.
Mhm.
He's going to react. And it just creates this thing called the reactive cycle. Just that awareness is huge. And so you guys, thank you. We love
Mhm.
your wisdom. We love your experience. Let's love and appreciate how honest you are. And Bob, we love it that it's been 14 years now that you
Mm.
guys have been happily married. Yeah, out of 40. So it makes me feel normal. So I appreciate you both being
Mhm.
being honest around your own marriages. And we can't wait to pick this conversation up again to really figure out how do we break out of this thing called the reactive cycle.